All right, Bitcoin Radio. What's up, everybody? It's your man, Joe Blackburn, and we are here for another awesome episode of Bitcoin Radio, WBTC, where Bitcoin lives. It's been a heck of a start to the new year with Bitcoin maintaining some movement, some positive movement up. I always like to look at the charts right before I go and do a show, just so, I can get excited and get fired up. There's just so much movement, so much activity. You're going to miss these days one day, right? You're going to miss it. When Bitcoin's nice and stable and it stays the same price for several months in a row and it starts moving like gold because everybody's, buying it and appreciating it as gold, you're going to miss the days when there was volatility and opportunity. Don't ever forget that, folks. Of course, that's a guess. That's what your man Joe Blackburn's thoughts and appreciation of what Bitcoin is today. But nevertheless, I could be right. I could be wrong. You could be right. You could be wrong. But it is still here, and we're over 10 years, 11 years now coming up, and just passed through 11 years, and no, right here, yeah, 11 years, folks. I mean, that's an incredible thing. You got to remember, it's 2020 now, right? And the reasons why Bitcoin exists, the reasons why crypto and the blockchain are what it is today, are because somebody or someone or something, was fed up with the way that the financial markets and movements were being used back in 2008. I mean, you got to take yourself back to what Satoshi was dealing with and the idea of an economy that could just collapse on itself potentially. There was a lot of uncertainty at the time. And, although I do think that we're in a position where, no matter what, there's going to be some substantial economy going on, especially in the United States, and I'm an American. It's not for sure. Nothing's promised. I mean, this could all be just a big show. And when it does fall on itself, God forbid, but if it does, there is a backup plan. And I've had this argument in this conversation with many people, and it's not just Bitcoin. There's a lot of other great projects. There's a lot of other really incredible people building on this. And if you heard recently, one of the last few episodes I've had, with Fred Krueger and Lynx, I was really impressed with what Lynx is doing and how they've done it. And kind of staying on that same topic, that same mold, there's another project, and I'll introduce that here shortly, that has a lot of potential and has a lot of really intriguing things going on with it, and the concepts and the reason why it exists just in general. So we're going to go through that in a second. I've got a guest coming on, and I'll introduce him in a minute. I also want to remind folks that, as 2020 comes up, I've challenged people in the past, if you could do one thing for crypto, Bitcoin, and blockchain, it's just be able to explain it, right? So I have an episode coming up. It'll probably be within the week or two, just on the simplification of like what you should be doing, how you should be explaining it, and I'm not saying that everything I'm going to give you is law, or that it can't be done better, or, that I'm the best at it. But I think I've done a pretty good job just putting myself in a situation where, I've been able to understand, explain, and give exposure to blockchain in a really simplified manner that makes sense, that has some analogies, and that can be compared to things that are familiar with folks. And I want to remind everybody, if you're going to sit there and explain the technology to people who don't understand technology, you've already lost. They don't care. Their attention's somewhere else. They're just going to, simplify it in their own mind and say, that's not worth figuring out. I'll buy it if it ever makes sense. You got to be better than that. Okay, moving on. All right. So today's episode, as I said, kind of falling in line with some of the past episodes I've had recently, is going to be with Mr. Max Freeman. Max Freeman is a pseudonym for the founder of Epic Cash, and there's some reasons behind that, and he'll explain the motivation and what the ideas behind what Epic Cash is. But although I've had a lot of friends point me in the direction, or tell me that this is something I need to be paying attention to, it seems like as recently as the last year and a half, we're starting to see these privacy focused and these real applicable projects make an impact into the market. And although it still may be minimal at times, it's not necessarily the market cap that I'm talking about here, or the price of a coin or a token. I'm speaking about what people are really starting to pay attention to, or even use. How about that, right, folks? Use. We forget that these actually have to work, and you have to be able to use it. And there's got to be a reason, right? I mean, if you can use it, there's a reason. I mean, it's one of those things that we often and too many times just push to the wayside. It doesn't matter what the market cap is. It doesn't matter anything like that when it comes to my personal opinion. Is it able to be used? Now, that being said, I don't want to speak. I mean, I have personally only been watching and looking into, what's been happening. And I think it's an appropriate time to bring Max on. So, all right, without further ado, Max Freeman, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thanks, Joe. It's great to be here.
Oh man, no, it's one of those opportunities when I get to hear the inside of a founder and the reasons and all the things above, that I mentioned in the lead up of the introduction, that I really appreciate people who have goodwill and are trying to do things, in a certain, I guess, really just in the cryptoverse that allow this space to be viewed in the traditional and really the reasons why Bitcoin was created in the same blanket, right? There's a lot of really cool concepts with what Epic Cash is doing. So let's go ahead and just start with what Epic Cash is. And Max, if you can just kind of give us a general overview about what it is and what it's doing.
Sure. So Epic aims to fulfill Satoshi's original vision of P2P electronic cash. Conservative emission with a limited final supply of 21 million provides utility as a decentralized store of value. And Mimblewimble privacy for every transaction restores lost fungibility, and that serves as the basis for adoption as a convenient medium of exchange. So we're a community project. We had a fair launch on September 2nd with no ICO and no pre-mine. It's 100% proof of work. And one thing that's noteworthy about the project that hopefully people will come to appreciate and participate in on a large scale is that anyone can mine on an ordinary computer with the CPU on an algorithm called RandomX. We have 3 different algorithms that enable us to split the block rewards between CPU on RandomX, GPU with ProgPow, and then ASICs on C31+. So the network not only gets stronger, but it enables us to make sure that every type of hardware can participate in the mining process.
No, I absolutely love that concept. It's really important to me that we simplify and make blockchain easily understandable. And you may have just heard me in the introduction there too, is that, even people who've been in the space for 2-3 years, they're incapable of explaining this properly. And it even comes down to the type of tech that people are using or these projects are using just in general. So to have that ability to get on there, even if you're just learning, what a place to start, right? I mean, if you can go on there and CPU mine or GPU mine or ASIC mine, whatever you have at your disposal or whatever you can use, most people are going to have a CPU that they can use, in this day and age. Well, it makes a difference.
Sorry to interrupt, Joe, but one important point there is that the hardware that you can use to mine on your CPU could be 10 years old. There's people who have obsolete server hardware that they've put back into service to utilize to mine Epic on, and that's a sophisticated user. But what we hope to approach next is a type of person who's never mined before, and we're creating a one-click graphical user interface miner. So somebody would be able to download the miner, click start, and start earning money. And it really is that simple. And so opening up the mining process to potentially hundreds of millions of devices could be important for decentralization and resisting the tendency for Bitcoin mining to be concentrated in certain places.
Makes complete sense. And so look, and Max, as we get into the introduction for who you are and what you're doing and why you've done this, I definitely want to take a moment and point out that, folks, this is not a paid advertisement. This is not a sponsored, interview. This is organic. This is authentic. And it's really important to me that, when I bring on a project and give somebody the opportunity to speak to the audience, that y'all are respected and appropriately so in the full transparency. And in the matter of full transparency, this is very easy for me to sit here and say that, the project is at minimum interesting. It's something that, if you're, brand new to this space, or if you've been around for a while, you should be intrigued. There should be a lot of interest in at least understanding what's going on here. I think it's pretty cool. I know a lot of people who have at least pointed to me. In fact, after I did the Links interview, I had several people reach out on Twitter and say, that they were part of the community with Epic, and that they wanted an opportunity to have this conversation. So, Max, let's talk a little bit about the Max Freeman and who that Max Freeman is and why Max Freeman even exists today.
Sure. So Max Freeman is a character that I created that derives from maximum freedom for mankind. Some of our team, or not team, some of our community operates using their real life name, and some are just a username on a screen. And as a privacy coin, it is important that we respect everyone's privacy and their choice to reveal whatever they want to about themselves. I for my for my preference, choose to be pseudonymous and use an Andrew Jackson avatar. So the reason that we created the project was, and the name Max Freeman and Maximum Freedom for Mankind, is that debt-based currency is an ultimate scam that robs everyone and imprisons everyone in a really subtle way. And with Bitcoin becoming digital gold and compromising on the medium of exchange capabilities with how limited it is and slow to change, Mimblewimble offers us an opportunity to kind of attempt a Bitcoin 2.0 that can scale and therefore and has fungibility, that therefore can lay the basis for adoption in new ways as a medium of exchange. Epic can be sent over Telegram, email, SMS, direct HTTP connection, stuff like I2P for further anonymity is coming. And so Mimblewimble is really a quantum leap forward in terms of the compression of redundant data that it allows. It's about 90% more space efficient than Bitcoin on an apples to apples basis. So that opens the possibility for full nodes on smartphones. So we've taken a lot of concepts that we wish Bitcoin had and made something as close to Bitcoin as possible and replicate all of the aspects that make Bitcoin awesome and address those handful of issues where it's not so awesome, even if people don't quite appreciate that yet. I think fungibility will increasingly be a word that we see as the holdings are monitored and tracked. I like to say that using Bitcoin is like posting your bank statements to Twitter every time you do a transaction. There are benefits to a transparent ledger, but the drawback is that complete surveillance that surpasses anything that's possible in the legacy financial system is a reality through Chainalysis tools. And so that has important implications for freedom. And as we've seen in countries like China with the social credit score, if you have centralized digital money that can be turned off based on what you say or who you are or whatever, censorable money is not as useful as uncensorable money. And so we set out to create true P2P electronic cash that is uncensorable.
No, as I continue to watch projects, especially the newer projects over the last year and a half or so, I've just watched this familiarity to what people have been using for years now, if not over a decade, with either PayPal or what Venmo is and other ways. You can't sit there and you don't even have to change the way things are happening as far as, how easy it is for the regular average human to transact on whether it be PayPal. And that's one of the things I really like about what you just described with Epic, and whether it's SMS, whether it's email, whether it's just traditional, means of blockchain transaction. It is familiar for people to be able to do this. And how big of a deal was that to you? How big of a deal was this user experience?
Oh, that's central. It's primarily the unbanked and underbanked, which is about a 4 billion population size, that are not connected to the global financial system and are locked out of the banking system. For example, if you're undocumented, you're gonna have trouble opening a bank account, and so you're marginalized, and your opportunities are lowered for what you can do in your life. And so we think that by providing the world a payment platform that replicates the proven value accrual properties as a store of value of Bitcoin, that's something that could really unlock a lot of human potential and raise living standards.
I completely agree with you, and I've harped and been such a proponent right now over this last year, especially as we've witnessed, especially for altcoins, really really dark winter, and it's extended far past what Bitcoin's was in a lot of ways. And I have to remind people. Look, there are projects that are going to come out of this winters. They are, and they're out there right now, and they're doing things. And I don't want to sit here and speak for Epic or for any other company and say this is the one that's going to make it. I've learned my lessons, giving my endorsements on things, but it's really easy to see why something along the lines of what you're describing is going to be, essential to the progress of what blockchain is, and why new users will start using it. Folks, we can't just sit here and say that what's in the cryptoverse right now, as far as population, is going to be enough to sustain, build, and give credibility to. It's got to be a continuous flow of new users. And what makes somebody come in to be new? It takes, a need, fill a hole, whether it's speed, whether it's the ability just to have an account online, without needing a bank. And as you said, whether you're undocumented or in the United States as a, somebody from, Latin America coming up, and, regardless of right or wrong or what you think about, if that should even happen, it's still a human right to be able to interact and transact, especially on the internet, which is in theory, decentralized place. Now, Max, my next question would be, at least, is that, how is it that you plan on explaining this to people? How do you go and get new users? What is this concept, going to do if it doesn't have new people coming in? Obviously, this is the age-old question for anybody in blockchain: is how do you onboard new people? But what's your kind of your strategy here?
Sure. Well, before I get into that, I just wanted to touch on one point that I noted as you were talking. You said other companies. Epic is not a company. It's a decentralized community project, sure, like Nero. So there's no centralized entity that is an attack point, because that is also a design flaw that, if something like this becomes successful, could be an Achilles heel. So we were able to.
I apologize for not making that more clear and misspeaking that way, because that is so true, and it's an important note to make sure that people hear.
Yeah, and it also has important securities law implications, as we've seen the delisting of Zcash on Coinbase UK as an example. Stuff like that happens because of the nuances and details and of how they were created. So yeah, how do we plan to get users? Well, when anyone can mine, and that is made really easy. People like students and the elderly, and a lot of other people that have never even thought about crypto mining, when they see family and friends making money from downloading essentially what the young people would think of as equivalent to an app on their phone, they just download the miner, click start, and they can start earning money. We hope that the community of those users will make, for example, videos talking about how much they made and what they were able to buy with the money. And we've seen a strong community form. It's still small, but very strong and very, very tight knit and very vibrant of people that are passionate about the project. And so we've started to see people build third-party services, and also things like wallets and ways to send, and exchanges and pools and so on.
Max, all that makes a lot of sense too. And, I appreciate the way that you're able to explain a lot of those things. Now, as I look around the crypto space and I see, what other, projects or other, tokens and whatnot have done to fail, it's really the lack of use case. And, you've kind of already described a little bit about the use cases and with the unbanked, but where do you see this? Like, how do you see this working? And what are some of the key points, and like why you believe and why you even created this, that are going to be so successful compared to other, similar, or at least in concept, obviously, when I speak about the blockchain projects?
Well, remittances in particular and cross-border trade more generally is a major opportunity for us. Banking fees for stuff like wire transfers are very high if you use a service like Western Union or something like that. It's also very high. People are imagine a foreign currency translation. I was in Dubai talking to someone from Uganda who sent money home, and she described the process, and I did the math on how much was lost, and it's astonishing. And so people being able to send money around the world instantly within 1 minute for essentially free. That opens up opportunities for a lot of people to connect in ways that they couldn't before because they're prohibitively expensive.
All right. So over the last, 2, 3 years, specifically when crypto and Bitcoin, started to really take hold publicly, we've been really privileged to watch this space grow. And a lot of the reasons why it's been, a big deal is there's been at least an idea of privacy. And back when nobody was using Bitcoin, people thought that Bitcoin was pretty anonymous, right? But that's simply not true. It's been proven, it's not just proven, it's a fact that you can go look on the blockchain. And if you're able to establish, 1, 2, 3 steps, you know what someone's holding in their Bitcoin account. And 5 years ago, no big deal. Today's age, people take that very seriously. And I'm not necessarily talking about from a government perspective. I'm just talking about there's no reason to have to explain why you deserve privacy. It's a basic human right. So Epic has gone out of their way and really tried to make, an impact in this space through privacy. And it's been a focal point of what Epic Cash and why it exists. And, I know how important that aspect is to you, but let's talk a little bit about that, combining that with what Max Freeman stands for and the reason why Max Freeman exists and what we've already discussed, combine that and kind of explain what your overall concepts of where we stand today with privacy and what Epcash is doing. And then where's the scalability? What do you see? Why is this so important and how is this going to work in the future?
Sure. So we've seen Bitcoin become a massive success, and we know that decentralized money works. Unfortunately, what we have today is decentralized censorable money through the surveillance of the transparent blockchain. And so that impairs what's known as fungibility, or the interchangeability of one unit of a currency from another. Imagine you had to keep track of which dollar bill you have in your wallet rather than simply knowing how many you have. That's kind of the equivalent. So this gives us an opportunity to attack the next level of Exter's monetary pyramid. Things like gold are at the bottom, and then above that you have paper cash. I think Epic could become a replacement for paper cash in a lot of countries that have high inflation or weak performance. Places like Argentina and Venezuela and Turkey, their citizens are suffering, and so this can have a direct impact on human health and well-being. And in countries like Argentina, where they have really cheap electricity, or Venezuela, it could be very powerful for people to leverage that in a way at home by plugging in their miner and using that money to survive.
Yeah, well said. I look at this, Max, and I see, what a lot of other people don't. And that's not tomorrow. That's what does privacy mean 10 years from now? Because we're really, really on the forefront of a controlled digital age. And you brought up China earlier. I mean, that should worry everybody when you can't make a single movement without everything, whether it be your cell phone, whether it be, where you went to go get Starbucks at, or, whatever movement you make is now digitally, is stamped forever. It's always going to be there through data. And, our money is no different. We should be very, very protective of that. And I don't see a world that is going to be very free in 10, 15, 20 years from now, if not sooner. I mean, we're already on the verge of that. We've seen numerous, reasons why that this has actually, been a huge concern, whether it be the data that's been, mined and used from Facebook that might not have been in our best interest, or whether it be, data hacks or people being able to hold and store information. And this kind of what Epic Cash is doing encompasses a bigger picture here. And I really, number one, appreciate that. But number two, I want to kind of hear you speak on, why the essential part of privacy is going to be a focal point. And we're ahead of the game right now knowing this.
Yeah, Mimblewimble is really exciting in that it's privacy without compromises. Other privacy coins, like the current leader Monero, which uses ring signatures, it has a very large blockchain as an example, or Zcash it requires quite a bit of time on a strong computer to generate a transaction, and privacy is optional in Zcash. It's not in Monero, and that impacts fungibility and the utility of the currency. So with Mimblewimble, you get the privacy kind of for free as a byproduct of the way that it discards the data about transactions from the blockchain. You don't have to store everything back to the beginning of time. You just kind of represent the current state of who has how much money. And so, but getting back to why privacy is important for us as individuals, we've already seen how our liberties are always trampled upon, even in relatively free countries like the United States. There's all kinds of abuses constantly. And so I think this has tremendous important implications for human freedom, that we appreciate the importance of privacy in our money. When we have nation state digital currency, like China is coming out with here pretty soon, that is subject to the same surveillance techniques as the existing banking system, which are quite sophisticated, and the existing Bitcoin network, I might add. That's pretty scary in terms of the totalitarian control degree that offers to any government around the world. And when governments have more power, they tend to use it. And so I think people's freedom is on the line. And if you care about your rights, then you should make a choice when you're using a form of money. Does it keep you enslaved and entrap you, or does it free you? And is it fair? The existing system is not fair to most people. It benefits a tiny handful who are on the receiving end on the right side of the imbalance in the structure. And so we know Bitcoin is successful. It's 10 years in, and we designed it for the long term to match Bitcoin's supply curve and intersect with it in 9 years at a time we call the singularity. There's 5 block halvenings between now and then, by the way. So we know that this can work, and the question is, how do we get it into more hands, as we talked about earlier? So I think we have a huge educational mission ahead of us that people need to know. Simply by using one form of money over another, they're making a choice about what their values are and what their freedom is ultimately going to be.
So do you still look at Bitcoin as a positive? I mean, are you still a fan of Bitcoin per se?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we'll continue to see additional zeros added to the price. I mean, it went from $1 to $10 to 100 to 1,000 to 10,000, and I'm sure 100,000 and perhaps 1 million aren't far away.
So as Bitcoin goes, and obviously you're not against Bitcoin. That's not the reason why you've created this. You just noticed and been able to be witness to, whether it be user experience or other people's issues, that there are some holes, and we've covered several of these. But I do like how you still kind of stuck around with a lot of what Bitcoin's has done, and that starts with the structure. And so, what made you decide 21 million coins? I know that Bitcoin obviously did that, but is that something that you're personally, attached to for a certain reason, or you just wanted to kind of give a shout out to Bitcoin in that same respect? Because you could have done 22 million or 25 million, but obviously
why mess,
you did 21.
Why mess with success? It's the number Satoshi chose, and people know it. And so in 9 years, when the supply of Epic is in sync with that of Bitcoin, people won't have to do the math on the relative valuation of what one Epic to one BTC should be, because on other coins, when it's a different supply, you have to do the math to figure out the market cap and the relative valuation and stuff like that. The ways that Bitcoin is awesome are kept and preserved and honored here. And we really only mess with the few parts that make a difference, which are privacy and the ability of different types of gear to mine, which has important impact on decentralization and therefore censorship resistance of the network.
Would you say, especially as far as mining goes, and as you know, the different eras, I think is what you guys call them. Is that correct? Eras?
Yeah.
Okay, as the different eras come up, which I assume or coincide with the halvening, and of course I'm not as well versed in Epic Cash as you are for obvious reasons. But what is the concept here as far as difficulty? Is it going to be harder? Are you still going to be able to mine on a CPU, or how does that going to work?
Yeah, so the way it works, it's an approach called harmony mining. So in our network, ASICs don't come in and crush GPUs, which crush CPUs, which is what we saw in Bitcoin. The algorithms are apportioned a percentage of the block rewards. Currently, it's 60% for CPU, 38% for GPU, and 2% for ASIC. And those percentages gently change over time in favor of more GPU and ultimately more ASIC, because we can add more algorithms quite easily for stuff like SHA-3 to enable very, very cheap mining devices to be made that you could say embed in a wind or solar application. And then it gets really interesting. Today, that where the power from Bitcoin comes from is not necessarily where the power will come from in the Epic network 10 years down the line.
And that makes a lot of sense. Now, and you hit on a point about how it's not fair, this current system, but it's also Bitcoin can be, a lot can be said about Bitcoin not being fair anymore. There's a big problem that I say problem. I mean, it's relative, I guess, but there's a very centralized mining, effort out of China, where these big, mining pools are the ones that are winning, and they're winning a lot. And for as much as, I believe that, anybody should be able to do anything they want as far as that goes. I mean, who am I to say that these companies can't do that? It has taken away a little bit of the innocence and the authenticness and what the concept of what Bitcoin traditionally was. But I also look at this on the other hand, what is Bitcoin mining going to be in 10 years, especially if the Bitcoin price keeps going up? It's only going to get more and significantly less diluted. It's going to become a lot more where just one or two companies can even afford to do it, unless like IBM steps in, or the quantum computing age begins a lot sooner than we thought. And I don't see this as a positive. I see this as a negative for Bitcoin. It's one of my only concerns I have with Bitcoin. And you, along with the team and the community of Epic, you've all kind of been able to rally behind this flag of opportunity and of the interests of humans. And you've been able to mention to me that there's a certain effort that you've been trying to establish with Africa and some people over there. How has that been received? Are you getting a lot of really positive and encouraging of uses or even feedback from the people of Africa?
Yeah, absolutely. It may surprise many, but because Africa didn't have landlines, it went straight to cell phones. And Africans have had reliable digital money in most countries based on their cell phone networks for the better part of 20 years. And so their understanding of digital money is already quite advanced. And therefore, the receptivity to our offering is quite high. But back to your point about centralization, it's already where it is today, and I think we'll see a lot more concentration in 10 years in the case of Bitcoin, because the boat has already kind of left the station. It gets more expensive every year to participate, and so by keeping the mining open deliberately to lots of different types of people in lots of places on lots of hardware, that has important implications for the wealth distribution of where the value that's created here goes. The early whales and today the large miners with access to cheap power and cutting edge gear, they get the lion's share of the rewards. So you've got kind of a rich getting richer type of system that mimics what we see in the legacy world. And so if people get behind this, then it could potentially balance things out a little bit and put power and wealth back into the hands of the common man through this really open mining process.
Yeah, well said. And I look forward to, watching, Epic grow and see how this develops and hopefully, see tremendous success from the project. And, it sounds like not only, are the intentions sincere, that there's a lot of real potential here. And, if it's not you, somebody else is going to take this concept. It's going to work. You've already established yourself here as having something that works. I can only imagine that it's going to continue to gain in credibility and momentum. So I wish you the best on that, obviously, Max. What did we miss? Anything that you wanted to cover that we may not have hit?
Just a final thought, which is that
Sure.
commerce and trade are the cornerstones of prosperity, and the bedrock of trade is payments. And when absolutely anyone can participate, the barriers to entry that currently lock people into cycles of poverty in the developing world, they can finally evaporate. And so I would say that the mission of Epic is to enable the world's poorest billions of people an opportunity to grab onto that first rung of the economic ladder by plugging them into the financial system and hopefully improving living standards in developing countries and what we call emerging markets. So that's really who this is for, places that don't have functional money like we have the luxury of here. There's a lot of places in Latin America or Africa or developing Asia where the bundles of paper currency are still used. I mean, they use physical US dollars as the primary medium of exchange in Zimbabwe, for example. That's kind of absurd, but that's where we are. And so to move to a system that replicates the proven success of Bitcoin, but has additional benefits and possibilities, I hope that that's something that's appreciated by the world, and we put a lot of work into it, and it's up and running for 4 months now, and anybody can come in and participate. It's still very early days.
Absolutely. No, yeah, take advantage of it when you can, folks. All right, so Max, tell me, where can people find you? How can they find out more about Epic if they're interested?
Sure. So the website is epic.tech, and our Telegram group is very active as well. It's just under Epic Cash, and then we have presences on Facebook and other platforms as well. So anybody who's interested, I'd recommend taking a look at the website on the white paper on the website. And if you're interested, go ahead and download the wallet and the miner and come say hi and let the community open its arms to you and show you what we see in this concept, and provide a warm welcome.
Absolutely, and obviously, I'll be paying attention, man, and I'm hoping for as much success as possible for you. I think that what you're doing, the intent seems awesome. I love the ideas of freedom and of maintaining that digital privacy in an era where people are still unaware about how precious that is. And I look forward, as noted, to seeing what happens next with you guys.
Well, thanks for having me on, Joe. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Okay. All right, Bitcoin Radio. We'll see you next time. Thanks for your attention. Keep doing what you do. Take care of the cryptoverse. It belongs to all of us. I know what I'm doing. I know what Max is doing. What are you doing? We'll see you soon.